Welcome everyone to episode 5 of Be Aware, Not Afraid. This episode is going to be a Halloween special because we are going to visit nocturnal night crawlers. In this series, we like to visit some of the animals that people find creepy or just downright terrifying, and we want to bring awareness to these animals, how they live, what they do on a regular basis, and kind of try to debunk some of the myths that people might have heard about these animals, and also try to bring empathy to these animals. So today I have with me Erin. She is a field conservation officer and Bailout Nature Center's manager. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on this episode. I love nocturnal animals.
That's so awesome. And again, if you guys haven't seen any of my other episodes, please don't forget to go back and watch them. I am your host, Danae, and I am an education specialist here at the Detroit Zoological Society. So before we get started, some of these animals that we will be introducing you to are animals that we mostly find here in Michigan. And we're going to find them in wooded areas or even on some outskirts of those wooded areas where there might be parks or just a lot of trees where these animals can hide in. So because we don't usually see them out during the day, hence the word nocturnal, we were able to get some pictures, and Erin was able to share those pictures via trail cam that she posted outside the Bailout Nature Center. And so some of the pictures you're going to see, some of the animals, their eyes look like they're kind of glowing. So Erin, did you want to go over that a little bit?
Sure. So a lot of times when we take photographs at night or we're out at night with a flashlight, we'll see glowing eyes, and those eyes might be red or green or even blue or orange. And so a lot of nocturnal animals actually have a layer in the back of their eye. It's called the tapetum lucidum, and it kind of functions like a mirror. And so if you imagine being outside after dark, the only available light to you is going to be from the stars or the moon. And so that mirrory reflective coating is going to help reflect some of that light. So they're basically able to use more of the available light than our eyes. So humans do not have that layer in the back of their eye. And those different colors then come from different pigments in the eye. So that's just kind of a neat thing to look for.
Okay, that's actually really neat. I didn't know about the different colors. I did know that they glow, but not why they had different colors. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started, but I have to share my screen first. Okay, so I hope you guys can see that. So first up, we have red foxes. So here in this picture, you're going to see a red fox out during the day, and then we also have the night vision trail cam that Erin has provided for us. So red foxes, they are in the Canidae family, and that also includes wolves, coyotes, and of course our very own companion animals, dogs. So they are about 30 pounds in adult size. They can be about 3 feet long from their tip of their nose down to their tail. And red foxes usually have a reddish or copper color with black ears and a nice bushy tail with a white tip on the end of it. They are omnivores, kind of like you and I, so they eat meat and plants. And the type of meat that they like to eat is birds, reptiles, fish, and other aquatic life. The plants that they like to eat include berries, cherries, apples, and acorns. Now, I don't think I've ever met anybody that ate acorns. So the closest nut that we would probably eat compared to acorns would be like walnuts or almonds or something like that. So usually when people think about foxes, they picture them getting into chicken coops. And usually when we see them, or if we were to see them, it would be very early before dawn or very late at night. And here we have one more picture of a fox scurrying across the yard here. And it looks like, is this outside at the Bailout Nature Center, Erin?
Yeah, the camera is facing the side of the building.
Okay. Do we have any other species of foxes here in Michigan?
So we do. Red fox is probably the most common and the one we see most often. We also have a smaller fox called a gray fox. And so if I'm looking at this red fox picture, even in black and white, I can see it's kind of a tall animal with a long fluffy tail. Its body is kind of pale colored. Our gray fox is much shorter. It's very much like a small cat. It's amazing how cat-like they are. Their faces are very cat-like. This red fox has a long snout, and the gray fox does not. And then the gray fox also typically has a dark back and tail. Okay. And one cool thing about gray foxes, which I just learned this summer, because we did have one on the trail cam back in June, was that they climb trees. So that's unusual for the dog family. We do have coyotes out here on the island, but I have not had a single one show up on the trail camera, which has been up since March. So that's interesting.
Okay. They're really secretive. We're never going to find those guys. So next up we have raccoons. So everyone knows the raccoons. I've even heard raccoons given the nickname Trash Panda. It's kind of a weird nickname, but I understand, because usually when we hear about raccoons, we think that they are always in the trash, and that is also true. Because they are opportunistic omnivores, they take whatever opportunity that they can to find food. And it's a lot easier in the city because there's food everywhere, hence in the trash cans. So I have here with me a big raccoon, and as you can see on his face, there is a black marking that goes across their eyes that we like to call kind of like a mask. And they have a couple of stripes on their tails. Raccoons, like I said, are omnivores, and they also eat meat and plants like the red fox. They, however, like to eat fish, bird eggs, frogs, and even some rodents. As far as plant matter, they eat lots of different types of fruits, nuts, insects, and worms. So if you look here in this picture on your left, you can kind of see that their hands look like small human hands. So this makes their fingers very dexterous. Paired up with their intelligence, they are able to pop open food containers and even doors. And here we have a picture of a raccoon, and you can kind of see that glow in its eye that we were talking about earlier. It looks like he has a leaf on top of his head.
It does look like he has a leaf on his head.
And then here we have a close picture.
This camera was up near our little stream near the nature center, and the raccoons are really interested in running water. It's a water source for a lot of animals, but the raccoons, I've noticed, are particularly interested in the stream part of our backyard bird feature.
Oh, okay. That's really neat. So next we have opossums.
All right, so opossums, and again, you can see the glowing eyes, that reflective layer. Opossums get a bad rap. They have a lot of unique strategies for survival, and those strategies can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. So one thing that opossums do when they're scared is they'll open their mouth really wide, and they have a lot of sharp teeth because they can eat just about anything. They're omnivores. And so they'll open their mouths really wide when they're scared, and they'll hiss and they'll drool. So it looks like they're really sick and terrifying. They're just trying to scare you or your dog away. The other trick that they have is playing dead. They will just stop what they're doing and sort of dramatically flop over, and their tongue will hang out. And they're sort of hoping that a predator is going to say, oh, that's a dead thing. I don't want to eat a dead thing. The other thing people notice about opossums and don't maybe appreciate is their long, naked tail. So they are not related to rats. They're actually marsupials. So that is an animal like a kangaroo. So opossums are our only marsupial, and they give birth to very undeveloped young who immediately climb into the mother's pouch and stay there and grow for several weeks or months. And then after that period of time, they actually climb out and they ride around on their mother's back for a few weeks. And then at some point they just get kind of too big and they fall off, and that's where they start their adult life. So it's a little bit of a rude transition from being a baby opossum to being an adult. They eat just about anything. They will eat pet food that's left outdoors. They'll eat garbage, but they're really good at finding dead animal material and consuming that. They'll eat fruits. They will do a little bit of hunting for reptiles or amphibians or birds. They're really good at just cleaning up whatever they find out and about. So
it's funny you talk about pet food being left out. We have outdoor cats and we feed them outside, of course. So sometimes when we leave the bowls out, I will go outside to grab them, and I'd see an opossum right there, and I'm like, oh, you can. I gotta take that away from you.
opossum behavior, and many cats don't seem to mind.
Yeah.
If you were trying to reduce, perhaps an opossum is visiting your garage or your barn or an outbuilding or your front porch, keeping pets and pet food indoors is one way to reduce them. But they don't actually carry diseases. They eat a lot of ticks, which is eradicating tick-borne diseases if those ticks get consumed. And despite their drooling, it looks scary, but their body temperature is actually naturally lower than most other mammals. And so something like rabies just does not survive in an opossum. So they don't tend to have the same diseases that other wildlife can have, even though sometimes their behaviors make us wonder if they're sick.
Wow. So these are some pretty super duper animals here. So next up we have owls. Owls is actually one of my favorite birds. And we have about 3 different species that you will find here in the Detroit area. One of them you might not see in wooded areas, and I'll have Erin kind of explain that. But we do have a great horned owl here, and then we have 2 different pictures of the eastern screech owl. So we have a gray morph and we have a red morph.
So our 3rd species that's pretty common in southeastern Michigan is a barred owl. But these 2 that you're seeing on screen, the great horn, which is a big owl, and a screech owl, which is a very small owl, despite the fact that in the picture they look a lot alike. These 2 are really adapted to living just about anywhere. They'll live in your backyard or neighborhood park. But barred owls tend to need a little bit more forest, and they particularly like wet, swampy forests. So maybe not right downtown in a city or in the suburbs. They want a little bit more space. But I think if you came out here to Belle Isle and listened after dark, you would hear barred owls. There's a lot of wet woods out here. So
I should probably give a visit down there. It's been a while.
And actually, this is a great time of year for people to go outside after dark and listen. The great horned owls and the screech owls right now near my house are calling at night, so just early in the evening when it's just starting to get dark. Right. Because a lot of these birds actually nest in the wintertime, so they're just starting to find mates and find nesting sites right now. And then come January and February, they'll actually be laying and sitting on eggs and young. You can imagine these big birds, they take a long time to grow up, and so they start really early, even in the snow and the sleet.
So there are about 10 species of owls in Michigan that include the 3 that we've just mentioned. Usually you will see them in tree cavities. So if you were to look at this eastern screech owl down here, it would be a lot harder for you to see him because he's camouflaged into that tree with his grayish and kind of brown feathers that he has. So there's a myth about the owl that they can turn their head 360 degrees, and that is not true. So I have a owl skull, or a great horned owl skull. And the thing about owls is that they have really big eyes, but they can't move them separately from their head. So because they can't move their eyes, they have to instead move their head. But when they move their head, they turn it in one direction about 270 degrees, and then they have to start all over in order to get a better look at the other direction of surroundings that's in the other way. So next we have moths.
Lots of people love butterflies and grow lots of plants to attract butterflies to their landscape or their garden beds on their balcony, wherever you're gardening. But people forget about moths because to us, the ones that fly in the daytime that we see are maybe small and kind of gray, and we don't really know a lot about them. Well, it turns out that moths, which are essentially night-flying butterflies, they're in the same family. They have lots of really neat adaptations to life after dark, and they are actually much more common than butterflies. So in Michigan alone, we have almost 400 species of moths, and they range from teeny tiny, like pinky nail-sized moths to big palm-sized moths like our Luna moth and some of our other silver moths. And one great thing about moths is that because they're attracted to lights, if you have a porch light that stays on or a building near you that has lights on at night, if you check it in the morning, you can often find moths that were attracted to the light and just stayed on the building into the morning and are resting there. And so The moth on the left has a little bit of pink showing, and if it lifted its wings, it would have bright pink underwings. So some of our moths even have dramatic colors and patterns. A lot of them do have a lot of camouflage, and which is a great technique to survive being out at night and pollinating things if there are lots of other things such as bats trying to eat you. So I love the one on the left. It's a good sized one, like the size of my palm, and it is extremely fuzzy like a teddy bear. And one of the reasons that it's probably fuzzy is it actually doesn't start flying until later at night, and it actually doesn't start coming out until late in the fall. So we're missing all of these because we're indoors once it gets chilly out and dark. But there's a huge diversity of moths, and they're really important pollinators. They basically spend the evening going to flowering plants and consuming nectar and moving pollen from plant to plant. So it's really important when the butterflies are all tucked in sleeping for the nighttime that these moths are out.
So next up we have fireflies, and a really cool thing that I learned about a couple days ago about these bugs is that they are actually beetles. So beetles are part of the order Coleoptera, and they are just like any other beetle. They have these soft underwings, and they have a pair of hard covering wings called elytra. So there are about 125 different species of fireflies in North America alone. A cool thing about these bugs is that they eat slugs and snails. So if you have a garden and you're wondering why your plants are dying, and you find out that you have either some slugs or snails or any other type of insect that's a pest to your garden, these guys will eat them. Now, once they become adults, they either will continue to eat them or they will look for plant pollen and nectar. So I guess they're kind of considered pollinators in a way, right?
I think so. And I'm always amazed when I find these larvae in the garden, how different they look from the adults.
Yes, definitely. So this one has a very long body, obviously does not have any wings at all. Its entire body looks pretty hard from here. And then you go to the next picture and they look like this. So this is what a firefly looks like in flight. It's actually really cool. It's funny because I never hear them until they get really, really close to my ear, and then they're just this really giant bug. It seems really big. Yeah, so we have this picture here, and it kind of has this hard covering that actually covers up their head. So in this picture, you can't even see their head. You can barely see their antenna. But sometimes they stick their head out, and this is what they look like. And last but not least, we have our bats.
So we have 9 species of bats here in Michigan, and this time of year they are finishing up their swarming behavior, which is what they do right before they hibernate for the winter. And they are not true hibernators. They actually go through torpor, so they wake up quite a bit in the winter time. So you might still be seeing them, but because all of our bats here in Michigan are insect eaters, as soon as we get those hard frosts and the flying insects are basically done for the year, the bats need to be sort of ready, full of insect fuel to get them through the winter. And so bats get a bad rap. They are not blind. They actually have eyes. Those eyes are just small, and a lot of times they're hard to see if you're looking at the face of a bat. They're kind of tucked in the fur there. All of our bats do use echolocation to travel or find food, but bats don't have to use it. Sometimes if you imagine yourself commuting from your house to your workplace, someplace that you're really familiar with, you might not really be thinking about the drive. You're just kind of on autopilot, and bats can do that too. They're not required to use echolocation to move around. Bats have a really low incidence of rabies in their wild population, so I think they get a bad rap again because sometimes when you encounter a bat, it's out of place. You found it in your house in the daytime and you think this bat might be sick. But most bats do not carry rabies, so that's another myth. And they also don't get caught in your hair. Bats have the ability, partly because of echolocation and partly just because they're used to hunting very small insects, they can sense your hair. So I think when we're outside in the summer, we're very warm and we're breathing a lot, putting out a lot of carbon dioxide, which attracts a lot of insects. And those insects then swarm around us, and those are what are attracting bats. I don't think it has anything to do with our hair.
Okay.
So our bats are all insect eaters, and they eat a ton of insects. Each individual bat, and most of our bats are really not much bigger than the size of my thumb, with a wingspan. The biggest bat we have has a wingspan of about 11 inches. So they're small creatures. They can eat 600 to 1,000 mosquito-sized insects a night. So that is a huge component of our nighttime ecosystem that we just don't even think about. So when something happens to bats that causes their populations to decline, not only is that an ecological threat, it is also an economic threat, because think of all of the pest insects that a bat eats. They have a really important role to play in our ecosystems.
Well, that is some awesome information. I think bats are now going to be my new favorite flying mammal. So earlier in the video, we did mention that Erin used a trail cam. So a trail cam is here in the side, and it basically gives you the opportunity to see animals that you wouldn't see obviously during the day, and then other animals that probably won't come up to you. So like deer, birds, or even other animals that we probably wouldn't recommend that you get close to. You can take a trail cam, set it outside. There are different settings for if you want to take a picture or if you want to take a video. And then the settings for the night, you are able to catch a picture just like the pictures that we saw earlier. They don't come out in color because it's dark, but you still get a chance to see those animals. So they're very user-friendly. Scientists who are out in the field use them, hunters use them, and of course there are also citizens who just like to watch animals or like bird watchers. So it's very easy to use. You can find them in almost any outdoor store, and of course on Amazon. So one of the things about fireflies that I wanted to mention is that there has been a decline in fireflies because of light pollution. So in the cities, there's tons of light. It's lights on all the time. So it's hard for them to see their mates. So their mates have different flash patterns, but it's not as strong compared to a very fluorescent light in your house. So one way you can help scientists track these populations of fireflies is to join the Firefly Watch Citizen Science Project. And only takes about 15 minutes a week. And all you have to do is see if you see any fireflies outside. Check out those flash patterns, see if you can guess what kind of firefly it is.
I would just encourage people to spend a few minutes outside after dark sometimes. Just step outside, listen, look. Our eyes are not super well adapted to the dark, but it is nice to not use a light, because you will see better in the dark without the light if you don't ruin your night vision. And just listen for owls, see what animals are out and about. Sometimes we are so used to going inside as soon as it gets dark, especially these colder months of the year, that we forget how much is happening in the landscape around us. And I think it would take away some of our fear and concern about these animals if we were more used to seeing them and encountering them in their sort of natural lifestyles out in the after dark.
Yep, so whether you guys are camping or even if you're just out trick-or-treating, make sure you try to keep an ear out for those nocturnal night crawlers. Thanks again for watching. Be aware, not afraid. And I also want to give a big thank you to DTE for sponsoring this week's educational videos. This gives us the opportunity to give more educational opportunities for you guys to watch at home. Thanks again. Stay safe and happy Halloween. Bye.
Bye.